How we doing today? Happy Monday, Mon. IB Nation Sports Talk is up and rolling. I just saw a couple comments about my trip to the Bahamas that I took. No, as you can see, I don't have dreadlocks, and no, Stymie, I did not find $8 billion. So here we are, Vince DeDario, Sean Stires. We're rolling on this Monday. Glad to be. Who needs $8 billion when we've got each other, right?
Absolutely. Money is not what it's all about by any stretch.
No.
Friendship is what it's all about.
Yes. Yes. Let's just keep telling each other that.
If I ever won $8 million, Sean, some of it will be coming your way.
I would throw you some as well if I won.
Appreciate that.
$8 million. I've got, like sort of a list of, in my mind anyway. Of
That's right.
It would go. I would throw the DeDarios a bone, though. That's for sure.
Yes.
All right. So we're going to put kind of the final wraps on Notre Dame USC, of course, today. I know you did close to marathon programming on Saturday. You did a pregame show. I forgot about the watch party you guys were doing Saturday. How'd that go ultimately?
You know what? It was actually pretty fun. I get a little wound up during games, and it was funny watching. So we came on at 7. The game obviously didn't even start till like 7:45. And so I'm like, and people are like, oh my gosh, he's wound up. He's like, he's ready to go and all this stuff. And it was, once the game started, I thought the conversation was good because we were talking about strategy and all these different things. And there was a lot of good stuff in the chat, and it was a good time. I had a really good time. It was fun. It was different. That's for sure. It was definitely different.
Yeah, I had a different viewing experience of my own Saturday because I was still in the Bahamas. Notre Dame, the women played at 4:15. So the game got over, around 6:15-ish, something like that, a little bit before 6:15. Then we had some time, get back to the hotel. And there was like a little, not a sports bar, but there was a little bar right down the road from where the resort was. And so we watched, a lot of the staff went there. The team was not there.
Okay.
But the staff went there, the coaching staff, a lot of the the other staff, like the trainer, the strength coach, all these different people were there. There were a couple parents, of some players that were there as well. So it was first time watching with a group personally in a long time, actually. And, it was obviously very Notre Dame connected as well. After Michael Mayer scored Notre Dame's first touchdown, Niele Ivey jumps up and she does some push-ups. She does 7 push-ups.
Did somebody put her up? Did people put her up?
She did them on the floor. Her and a couple other. The strength coach actually jumped down there as well. So so that was a little bit different. So we did that for the first half. Then we went back to the resort. Everybody kind of dispersed at halftime. Really horrible reception for ABC in my rooms. It was the worst of the channels, of course. It was. But it was like it had kind of a choppy feed, and the audio would go like Herb Street and Fowler basically sounded like chipmunks most of the night. And that's probably an improvement based on a lot of the comments that I've seen about
From
Fowler.
What I've heard, that sounds like an absolute improvement. Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll touch on that rapid fire coming up in a little bit. If you would right now, hit that like button on YouTube. Of course, we appreciate it. You help out the Irish Breakdown channel. Podcast, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. We do appreciate it. It's amazing that the regular season is over at this point. Nuts. We've got about a week to, a little bit less than a week, obviously. We'll find out where Notre Dame's going for its bowl game. But boom, here it is. It's gone.
It goes by so fast, Sean. And
I know.
I will say, and just to kind of touch on your watch party with the women's staff, I do really appreciate it. I'm only associated with Notre Dame as far as like being on campus and speaking with coaches and stuff like that. So I'm not speaking as a whole, like all other colleges and college campuses and all of that. But at Notre Dame, at least the sports that I'm around, it is awesome to see the support that the other coaches have for the other programs. Because when I was at, I'm at, summertime, I'm in the football facility, and they had the baseball game when they were in the College World Series.
Right.
Not the College World Series. It was the regional against Tennessee. They had that game up on the Jumbotron during the football camp. And when they turned that double play to win it and go to the College World Series, all the coaches were hype and getting excited. And they actually gave a darn about what was happening with another program on campus. And so I'm sorry, I don't think it's like that everywhere. And so I think that's pretty cool. I think that's really cool. So
I do too.
I'm glad you got to experience that with another staff. You know what I mean?
Good point. It's a good point. Yeah. Like I said, it had been a while since I'd really done something like that. It was kind of cool to get, out of the resort and down. It was, like I said, it was a little bar. The barmaid, I guess you would see, I don't know if that's what we call them these days, but she was overwhelmed. She was like, she just kept saying, I was not ready for this. Because it was a group of, like 20 plus people.
I'm sure.
Of us basically took over the bar, and she was working. She was working.
I'm sure she made some money on it. So
that's what I told her. I said, look, you're going to get a good tip when this is all said and done. So just keep that in mind. Okay.
Just keep working, babe. just keep doing your thing.
Yeah. So the score ends up being USC 38, Notre Dame 27.
Yep.
My score prediction for this game.
You got some flack for this too, by the way.
I did. USC 35, Notre Dame 27. So I don't delight in the fact that I was right, but I picked Notre Dame's point exactly, and I was just 3 points off on the Trojans' point total. And I did get some flack for being the only staff member to pick against Notre Dame. And as I said on Twitter, wait, what am I just supposed to rubber stamp Notre Dame every week? What's the use in making picks if that's
right?
What we're going to do, right? So this is what I said about the matchup when I sent, we have to send Brian our little write-up and our pick and all that stuff. So here's what I said about the matchup, and I'll let you evaluate this, okay? I said, this is the latest in a line of games this season that I think Notre Dame can win, but there's just so much that has to go right. Southern Cal's run defense, justifiably so, is the weakness that's pointed to that, should most impact this game. But the Trojans allowed just 138 rushing yards and 424 passing yards in their only loss of the season, a 1-point loss to Utah, while they gave up 204 yards on the ground in the previous week's game, 48-45, in their win over UCLA. So they gave up over 200 yards to UCLA, still won the game. Notre Dame has to not only run the ball, but be more multifaceted with its offense, get a big special teams player too, and turn Caleb Williams and company over more than once. A tough task considering Williams has just 3 interceptions and 385 pass attempts. So that's what I said. Vince?
Yeah.
Again, I'm not reveling in the result, but I think I pretty much nailed it. What do you think?
Well, you did nail it. And I think that, Notre Dame was not able to get the run game going. That was obviously not the way they wanted to start. And that's why they got themselves into a 10-point hole in the first quarter. I mean, offensively, they played USC straight up from the second quarter on. The problem was they gave up a 10 spot
right
at the beginning of the game. And they just, and look, we said it all along that Notre Dame is not built to come back. That's not who they are. They're just not. And while they had their opportunities to do that, because they did, it was, and as bad as the defense played, as far as giving up points, right? As bad as the defense played, Notre Dame still had an opportunity to win that game. It was the turnovers. It was the 2 turnovers, specifically the first one, that did them in. It was right. You said in your write-up, Notre Dame needs to turn over USC, which obviously they did not do. And USC ended up turning over Notre Dame twice. So they were -2 in the turnover ratio. Ball game. I mean,
right.
You
talk about game of inches. There were obviously a couple times where it looked like Notre Dame, was going to have a turnover, and
Right.
like US, but I think they got all the replays correct,
I do
like
too.
including the
And
spot of Drew Pine, and it's like it
yeah,
looked like
that was a
initially like Pine
terrible
did
on the
just flip
field.
over, and then boom, his elbow's down,
Yeah, that was.
and
I thought even on the field that was a bad call. To be honest with you, I thought they gave him a really good spot. Even if his elbow didn't touch, I felt it was still a good spot. To be honest with you, but and they got the fumble correct, right? I mean, they got it right. And when you look back on it, all the 50-50 calls, rightfully so. I'm not saying that they were wrong in those calls, but all the 50-50 stuff seemed to go USC's way.
yeah,
From a karma standpoint. You know what I mean? Not
right,
not that it could have gone either way from a call standpoint, but from just the way so the fumble, the first down, those things, you could look at those as like 50-50 plays, but they went USC's way. They recovered the fumble. And then the one that Drew Pine had, he had a chance to recover it and didn't. USC recovers it, right?
yeah.
USC fumbles the ball. They end up recovering it. So, I mean, just all of that 50-50 stuff just went the other way. And that's just how the game is played, man. I mean,
Yeah.
that's football.
Yeah. And I mean, they were right in there. And again, like they needed to be at least even in the turnover. They couldn't be minus. And that's, but like USC went into that game, I think they had caused like 24 turnovers all season going into that game. Notre Dame had turned the ball over, obviously, a lot more in recent games, but they weren't near what USC was. And USC protects the ball so well. Like I said, Caleb Williams still only has 3 interceptions. And, so that was a tough task. They had to, in a game, it's one thing, just like for a quarterback to, or a team to put up all these stats against a decidedly inferior opponent like Boston College, UNLV, whoever it happens to be. It's one thing to do that, but when you're going up against a team that at the very least you're more evenly matched with, if not, they were an underdog going into this game, you had to have more of that kind of, that was my point. You had to create some breaks of your own. It had to be all 3 phases. It couldn't just be all on the shoulders of the offense. And unfortunately, that's how it ended up, especially when they did turn it over. But I'll tell you what, though, what's also underrated, Vince, is when USC gets the ball first, marches downfield, converts a couple third downs, using some misdirection on a couple consecutive plays and, hitting big plays in the process, getting downfield, they go right down and score 7-0. And that's what you're worried about. Like worst case scenario, that it's just going to be like, boom, here comes USC just waltzing downfield. And then you go 3 and out on your opening drive. That is just, they got very fortunate, I felt like, after falling behind 7-0 and then 10-0, that it was only 10-0, that the defense, at least in that instance, with a short field, because USC, after Notre Dame goes 3 and out, they get the ball at their own 49, and then the defense does at least make them settle for a field goal. That, to me, was one of the few victories that the defense truly got all night.
Very
and they
few.
were fortunate not to be in a bigger hole right off the bat.
Yeah, very few. And that's the problem. I mean, you're right. That was the one. Honestly, it was one of two drives that USC had all night where they didn't score.
Yeah.
And, they put Notre Dame in a position.
Well, it was 3, right? Because Caleb Williams did the little quick punt twice.
Right. So, I mean, that was 2. They only had 2 punts.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, that was it. I mean, that's the only time that Notre Dame stopped them from scoring. They went touchdown, field goal, punt, touchdown, 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 punt, touchdown, end of the game. And the last possession, technically, they didn't score, but all they did was put a knee on it. So, I mean, that doesn't count in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right. So they had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 possessions, and they scored on 6 of them. I mean, the defense didn't show up as a whole. They just didn't. I mean, and I don't. It was that first turnover by Drew. And look, yes, his stats were really good. Okay, his stats were good, but you can't turn the ball over twice, because every time he turned the ball over, they went down and scored a touchdown. Okay, so you say what you want about Drew, and he had a good game except for those 2 turnovers. But you can't say except for those 2 turnovers. That's the thing, because the first turnover was a 14-point swing. You were in the red zone going down to score. And I fully believe that Notre Dame would have scored a touchdown there.
You're talking about the fumble. Yeah.
Fumble. Yeah, they would have scored a touchdown there.
No, I know. That's a big swing.
Instead, USC gets the ball. They go 7 plays, 74 yards, score a touchdown. That's a 14-point swing. So if you look at the final score, you take 7 points away from USC, you add 7 points to Notre Dame, it's a different ball game. And they're not in a 2-point drill or a 2-minute drill at the end for Drew to throw an interception.
I mean,
that first turnover that was deadly in that game.
TCU right now is undefeated, essentially still because of a similar scenario against the Kansas Jayhawks. When Kansas was still undefeated, I think they were both 4-0 or 5-0 going into that game. Kansas is driving late in the first half, fumble at the 1-yard line of TCU. TCU ends up with the ball, and I think it took them like 4 plays to go down and score a touchdown. Again, it's a 14-point swing right there, and it ended up being a 1-possession game at the end. And as a result, here's TCU in the college football playoff.
That's the difference.
It's a big killer.
And that's football, man. And I do want to push back on this, Salty. It says a failed 4th and 1 with USC scoring afterwards. They did not score afterwards. They actually punted after that. So when Notre Dame turned it over on downs, USC punted immediately following. But still,
I want to talk. My biggest grievances with play calling in that game were those first 2 possessions.
Absolutely.
Other than that, I felt like, and I'll talk about it here in a second, but I'll just say this first. I do feel like when you look, especially offense, defense, and we'll save the defense here for a second, but I felt like Tommy Rees was at least able to adjust. It's something we've been all over him for. They obviously were not able to run the ball as effectively. Now, when you fall behind, you've got to kind of come out of your game plan anyway, but they still adjusted, and Pine obviously played a pretty good game. They made good adjustments. But let's talk about, real quick, 3rd and 2, first possession. Again, they go 3 and out. The Diggs jet sweep, you've got your 21, or was it even 22 personnel out there. Anyway, you've got your 2 running backs. You've got Estime, you've got Diggs out there. But, one, because I think it was 22. Now, again, I can't remember. I can't say for sure if Jaden Thomas was on the field. So, don't blame me for being, like one of these.
It might have been 32 personnel or 23 personnel. I mean, either way.
At the very least, there were 2 running backs, but they had everybody lined up tight. So what have they got? 11 in the box for USC. And they do a jet sweep to Logan Diggs. I think, question number 1 is, why was it not Chris Tyree, your fastest running back, running a jet sweep, or just fake the jet sweep and give it to Audric Estime, because I fully trust him to just truck the defensive back who is sitting on the edge of the defense and pick up the first down.
Well, I have a multitude of issues with that, because I wouldn't even call it a jet sweep, because he came from a wing position.
True.
So he didn't even have an opportunity.
He didn't even have a faster head start.
He didn't even have an opportunity to get up to full speed. And so you 100% ran right into that. I mean, that was just not good. I mean, I don't know how else to say it. It was not good. The play calling on that particular play was not good. Why would you bring everybody into the box and then try to run outside of that? And it was overthinking the situation by a huge degree,
which we've seen a lot of.
We have. And it was a big problem in this game on these 2 particular plays.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes. And then the Mitchapalooza play on 4th and 1, which, it's after the Drew Pine. First, he's got the first down. They go to replay.
4th and a long one. That's the problem.
And that's a great point, because it was a long one. Like, going back and looking at it, it's not just like 4th and half a yard or 4th and inches. It's a yard plus that he had to get to pick that up. And again, all 11 guys are in the box because of the formation that you've got. That would have been the perfect time, because I think it was Jaden Thomas standing on the left side of the line. He crashes in. He's basically just jumping on the pile. He wasn't actually blocking anybody. Just have him freaking free release, and that's the perfect time to have Mitchell Evans throw that Mitchapalooza pass for the first time, and he probably might have scored a touchdown out of it.
I honestly thought that's what we were going to see, if I'm being honest. I thought that this is the perfect opportunity for a fake, and I thought it was almost too obvious that it was going to be a fake, if I'm being totally clear on this. I when they lined up, and I was like, well, they're not going to sneak it here. That'd be stupid. So this is an obvious. I mean, this is an obvious situation where you're going to fake that we've all been waiting for. Because they've snuck it so many times. Here comes the fake. It's going to get stopped because everybody knows it's coming. But no, they tried to sneak it. And I'm just befuddled by that whole situation. That just shocks me.
And you've done it enough this year. You're not surprising USC with anything in that instance. That was like, if you're going to go for it, that's the perfect time to pull that pass, But again, that's not, and again, you're also in field goal range, right? If I'm remember, you're in field goal range. So
on the fourth down,
I
don't remember. I'm going to assume that you're right, but I honestly don't remember. I just remember being very upset. So it's kind of where I'm at on that one.
Yeah.
You're right. They drove. Let's see. They started on the 27.
They were at the 27. They were at the 27 or 28-yard line.
And they started on the 27, gained 54 yards. Right. So they were right on the edge of field goal range at the very least.
Yeah.
I will say this: Groupie has the leg to get it from there. I don't know if he's got the left to right, but he definitely has the north to south. It was the left and right that I would have been worried about.
Only got one more game to worry about Groupie's range.
That's a solid point.
And then it's on to the next guy. So, so Mike Nolan with the super chat. First two possessions, missed assignments. Tight end released. Didn't seal linebacker. Play was open. 3rd and 3. Pine missed Diggs flaring open before Mitchapalooza. And that's, it's still, I'm a little bit mixed because you can talk about, well, Drew Pine completed all these passes, first 15 passes to open the game and, over 300 yards and all this different stuff, 3 touchdown passes. And he did, he played for, with the exception of the 2 turnovers, which were killers, he played a pretty good game. But there were still, which pass was it? The one where, I know it was second half, and I'm trying to remember off the top of my head here, where the first thing he does is look for Michael Mayer. And of course, Michael Mayer is double teamed. And then I think he's got Colsey running a deeper route on that same side, right behind Mayer. He never looks at him, never throws it. There's still those kind of opportunities for Drew Pine where you can say, well, he's got these numbers and efficiency and all this different stuff, but there's still receivers that he doesn't throw to, and that's.
I mean, he did throw to the backs though. 5 receptions for 64 yards or whatever.
He did.
So, I mean, he did throw to the backs more, and it was
we've been calling for it. Yes, you're right. We can't overlook it.
We all saw it. So he did throw to the backs. So I mean that it's okay. Again, I don't want to pick on Drew, right? Because he played a good game, but you can't say he played a good game, but right and. He played a good game, but they had those turnovers, specifically the first one. That's the game to me. I'm sorry.
Michael, I do agree, again, to an extent. He says 15 passes to where? What does that mean if you're not scoring touchdowns? Well, he did throw 3 touchdown passes. So it's like, but again, there are always opportunities that Drew leaves on the field.
Right. And Michael's very upset they only scored 7 points in the first half. I get it. I get it. I totally understand where you're coming from, right?
But again, if you're giving away, you gave away the first possession when you go 3 and out. You go 3 and out against, and that was my biggest, that was the first question. I'm like, they can't go 3 and out. They can't go 3 and out. And then here they go 3rd and 2, and they run that stupid play and they go 3 and out. And again,
worst start possible.
Yeah. They were very, very fortunate again that the defense when all USC had to do is go 51 yards, that the defense held them in the red zone. One of the few times they've bowed up in the red zone, and not allowed a touchdown when a team gets in the red zone this season.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, there's a lot of things that you can nitpick about this game. You're right, 7 points is not enough in the first half. I agree with that, right? But they went toe to toe with USC scoring wise from the second quarter on.
Yeah,
they did, but they got outscored 10-0 in the first quarter. That's the problem. It's not just the first half. It was the first quarter that was the problem. They gave up 10 points in the first quarter, and they had no semblance of an offense in the first quarter because in the first quarter, Notre Dame had 2 possessions. One was a 3 and out, and one was a turnover on downs. That's not going to get it done. And nobody's going to dispute that, right? 7 points is not going to get it done.
Right.
But they did hold USC to, they had a 10-point deficit, but then they had a 10-point deficit the rest of the game, pretty much. So, again, a valiant effort by many of the Notre Dame players, and then many not so much. And so, as Brian said in the post-game show, there's going to be some serious conversations had with a lot of the, with a number of players, coming out of this at the end of the season and all of these different things. And I am not doubting that Drew Pine played as well as Drew Pine can play. Just can't turn the ball over the way he did. You just can't do it. You can't fumble the ball going into the red zone. You can't do that.
No.
So,
and it's just very unfortunate. I would love to see how the game played out if that hadn't happened. Right. I think we're having a different conversation today, but it happened. USC,
it is what it is.
USC only threw for 232 yards, Caleb Williams, but they ran for 204. Right. They're the team that had the balance, no turnovers. And then Notre Dame, 318 passing yards, just 90 rushing yards. And again, the 318 is a result of the adjustment that they were able to make. It's like, okay, we're not just going to be able to ram it down USC's throat. They stacked the box. They were able to come up with enough stops early that it made Tommy Rees and Notre Dame come out of what they wanted to do. USC just dominated the line of scrimmage, though. Again, they rushed for 200 yards, and let me just ask you this, Vince, because I think we both agree that defense is the bigger issue, and we haven't touched on defense yet. We had someone who said he just popped in, D-Rock Irish, may have missed the defensive look. Defensive tackling was atrocious, disappointed in USC gaining 156 yards a reserve running back. Fair. Well, Larry says, biggest problem for me, the blitzes to nowhere.
Sean and I could have had over 100 yards in that game. It didn't matter who the back was. Sorry. Yeah. I mean, they're starting. By the way, they kept showing the starting running back on the sideline. Did you see when they would do that? Did you get a good look at him out of curiosity?
I did.
Did he not look like his facial hair to me? If they would have stuck a pair of black glasses on him, he would have looked like Bobby Valentine trying to sneak back into the Mets dugout.
He's not who I thought Dye would look like.
No.
Not at all. Not at all. Not who I would have thought he looked like. That's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
I don't know why that image came into my head when I saw him, but that's exactly what I was thinking. But no, it wasn't the running back that did amazing things. It was the offensive line. The offensive line took advantage of Notre Dame's front seven and specifically of their linebackers. Took advantage of them all night long, and I give a lot of credit to Lincoln Riley for just sticking with the run because that's not his MO. And he did it because he knew that was what was going to win them the game.
Now, and look, Al Golden, talking about adjustments and lack of adjustments, Al Golden came in, obviously, with a game plan. He went with his 3-3-5 defense. And as you know, Vince, as we all know, sports are about adjustments. And Notre Dame's been really hit and miss with it throughout the season. And I felt like, again, they did a good job of adjusting offensively. Maybe it's because they were forced into that situation, but they still adjusted and were able to turn it into some points in the second half. But when Al Golden was hired, I still remember this. He talked about, his background in the NFL and, they make adjustments series to series and this kind of stuff. And, so he felt like that was really going to prepare him and have him ready. But did it feel like we saw that at all? Like, what adjustment did Al Golden make throughout the course of that game?
He didn't. That was the problem.
And it's like there's a track record of it throughout the season where he hasn't adjusted either. Like when you look at how things have gone.
No, I agree with you. The adjustments for this entire staff have been an issue for me the whole season, offensively, defensively. Other teams have made much better second half adjustments than Notre Dame has. And that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem moving forward. And if they can't fix that, then maybe the guys that are there aren't the right guys, because you have to be able to adjust. You have to. And they haven't. And it's not good.
Here's an interesting question, super chat from SB. How important is elite talent to the success of Reese and Golden's schemes? Notre Dame is setting itself up for frustration if top three classes on top of three classes on top of top three classes are needed to be in the playoffs.
Well, first of all, Notre Dame does have a top three class coming in. Depending on what service you look at, it's either 2 or 3 right now. So that's not going to be a problem, number one. So that, I know that's the second part, but so if that's what you need, then Notre Dame's going to have that. I don't think that is the issue per se because of their schemes. I think that, the obvious thing that Notre Dame is missing is that they're missing an elite quarterback. That's what they're missing, right? And whether you think Tyler Buchner is that guy, or whether you think Kenny Minchie is that guy, or whether you think CJ Carr is that guy, or whatever, they don't have an elite quarterback on the field right now. That's the issue.
Right.
And that was the difference in the game on Saturday.
Yeah.
No matter what you have to say, that was the difference. Well, the defense played like garbage, but if they had an elite quarterback, Notre Dame wins that game.
And look, and it's not just that USC had an elite quarterback. They did. But Notre Dame still has a backup quarterback,
absolutely.
And I guess what we have to kind of sit back and evaluate when we ultimately evaluate Tommy Rees, because we can be frustrated in a lot of, rightfully so. We can be frustrated with a lot of different things that he did. But at the end of the day, one of the questions to me is, did he maximize Drew Pine? Like, did we see the best that we could see out of Drew Pine? I think the answer is probably yes, based on everything that we saw. So, like, if you're going to grade on the curve, as frustrated as you might be, because again, like Drew Pine, with the exception of Saturday with the interception and the fumble, did not make a lot of fatal mistakes this season. He protected the ball pretty well.
That's why this surprised me, to be honest with you, because I thought that's one thing that he's done really, really well.
Yes,
is protected the football.
Right. And he ended up going 8-2 as a starting quarterback. And with all the frustrations and everything else, and and the pendulum of the Drew Pine arc, it's like, well, everyone's doom and gloom after seeing him at the end of that Marshall game, and I think we're the same. But but then he goes on, he catches fire for 2.5 games, and then all of a sudden we see the other Drew Pine, where again he's not turning the ball over, but they're still winning for the most part, with the exception of Stanford. But he's not turning the ball over, but he's still a sub 50% quarterback. And then, his play kind of elevates again toward the end of the season. And, so much so that people are like, don't even want to talk about having Tyler Buchner in a bowl game,
right?
Coming off the bench.
Right.
And so now I have to think that Tommy Rees did maximize Drew Pine. And so, like, as you evaluate Tommy, and I'm not saying Tommy Rees is a perfect offensive coordinator based on mostly on lack of adjustments and some game plan issues that we saw this season. But I think that I lean much more toward he probably maximized what he could get out of Drew Pine this season.
I don't disagree with you. And this isn't a disagreement, but I felt like they should have, how do I want to say this? If we're looking at Saturday night in a nutshell, I think that's a maximized Drew Pine. I do. I think that's Drew Pine. We're not asking him to be elite, but that's Drew Pine right there, right? I feel like there were too many games this season where they did not maximize him, and it didn't happen soon enough.
And that's true too.
So that's what I'll say to that. But I agree with you.
But part of it is because of simple things like giving him running backs to throw the ball to more and those kind of things.
And they should have done that more. Like it almost felt like at times. Now there were times where he didn't throw it, but there were also times where that running back wasn't put out to throw to, right? And so that is maybe a scheme issue or whatever. So I felt like that could have been done better to help him out earlier in the season than they did. But your point is 100% on par. We have to remind ourselves, Drew Pine is a backup quarterback. He's a backup. And Notre Dame went 8-4 with a they went 8-2 with a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
A lot of teams would be pretty stinking happy to have that, right? So, yes, we're all upset about the season. We all think it was a disappointment going 8-4, and I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm on that train, right? But if you look at the macro, the bigger picture, 8-4 with a backup quarterback for 10 games, I mean, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not trying to just spew rainbows and sunshine here because it's a disappointing season, right? And Notre Dame was one turnover away from being in a New Year's Six game, in my opinion. They're one turnover away or one defensive stop from being in a New Year's Six game. So, I'm not happy, but I can at least explain it away a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I agree as well. We had a question, Nick Lane, by the way, with a super chat. We were only down 10 points with 2 turnovers. That's not bad. I don't know. I don't know if I accept it quite that,
right.
Is it that bad? Well, no, but this is not like the 2005 USC or the 2006 USC. This is still a little bit different. It's the talent disparity is not that great.
And
it's just that the talent disparity at quarterback
is great.
Was there for everybody to see.
Yes. And I would also say, you can play this game all you want, and we played this game in 2018, right? When Notre Dame went up against Clemson. If you flip the quarterbacks on that team, Notre Dame wins that game. You can say the same thing about Saturday night. You flip quarterbacks, I don't think the game's close.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest, I don't think the game's close.
Look,
and Notre Dame wins.
The bottom line is, and I was thinking about this, 20 years ago was 2002, really when the rise of the Pete Carroll era began, 2002. Carson Palmer winning the Heisman Trophy. And then, of course, you had Matt Leinart and Reggie Bush, and those guys come in afterwards. But when you look at all the quarterbacks that USC has had drafted in the first round, some of them more deserved than others, but still, with very few exceptions, Brady Quinn, Deshaun Kaiser are the top two who come to mind. USC has always had an advantage for the most part. The vast majority of the last 20 years, USC has had a great advantage at the quarterback position.
Sure.
Like in the, again, at the beginning of those 20 years with Pete Carroll, it mattered more because they also had more talent across the field. But in more recent years, Notre Dame has had better talent across the field. They've managed to win those games, even when you have a guy like Sam Darnold. Again, do I think he deserved to be a high first-round pick? No, but he was, so talent evaluators thought that he was. But, whether it's him or, Slovis or, whoever these guys may be, all, really highly thought of quarterback talent, they've had the advantage there. But Notre Dame, I think we all know, that's where Notre Dame has to be better.
Absolutely.
Just look at Clemson where they are right now.
Yeah.
If you dropped Caleb Williams into Clemson, they'd be a lot different looking team right now. Or an elite quarterback like Trevor Lawrence. And that's really again, even though Clemson had guys, they had more guys a couple of years ago and Trevor Lawrence was still there. To me, that's still.
But they had Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence back to back.
Exactly.
That's an embarrassment of riches, right?
Yes.
Now, they went out and got those guys. Don't get me wrong. They went out and recruited them, did it the right way, all of that. But when you have those two guys back to back, you're going to have success. And they did. They won multiple titles.
Right.
Right.
Things don't have to be as perfect when you can start off with a high-end guy at that position. That's just what it comes like. So, to answer the question, do you have to have all this talent to run these systems? The answer is no. In fact, I think with Al Golden, it leans more like he likes, J.D. Bertrand's a great guy. He's a smart guy and all that stuff. But we can see what his deficiencies are. But Al Golden really seems to value that, kind of like a past defensive coordinator, like having the smarts and the ability to process all that stuff. And I get that there's a place for it, but you're going to need, again, you're going to need a higher end guy, higher end level of talent at those positions as well, ultimately, if you're going to have truly championship defense.
Right. No, I'm with you. And then, there's high-end talent coming for they're obviously there's freshmen.
Yes.
They're going to be sophomores. And those freshmen, they did get, whether they played enough for some people, which I totally understand. Okay. Totally get it. But they do have playing experience, right? And I think it's going to be an all-out battle at linebacker next year and in the offseason, because
that's what I've been thinking about that as well.
Because
these young guys are coming on. These young guys are, are coming on, even though we didn't see as much of them against USC. But again, I think part of that was they wanted the assignment sound guys. Unfortunately, the quote unquote assignment sound guys weren't as assignment sound as they needed to be. Missed a lot of tackles out there.
The gains of having a smart, intelligent person on the field were outweighed by the fact that they didn't execute.
Right.
Plain and simple.
Especially when you're playing with this 3-3-5. So you're keeping an extra linebacker on the field more often, and that's that's the way the game played out. That's part of how USC was able to run for over 200 yards.
Yep.
So
agreed.
Okay, question from Brent about the bowl games. Who and where will we play our bowl games? So it appears to be down to 3. Okay. Like there, from all everything that I've been able to gather. You got the Cheez-It Bowl in Orlando. You went there a couple of years ago, right?
Is that what it was called? I went to Camping World Bowl. Is that the same
think it's
one?
That's the Cheez-It.
Okay.
Yeah. You got the Gator Bowl, which is in Jacksonville, and you got the Holiday Bowl.
Right.
Out in San Diego. Virtually every projection out there right now has Notre Dame playing in the Gator Bowl.
Correct.
Against an SEC team.
That's what I've seen as well.
Yeah. Some say South Carolina, some say Mississippi State, some say Ole Miss. It's, obviously it's going to depend on
an SEC team.
Similar records. Yeah.
Which okay, and it for the ACC side of things, right? The way the ACC tie-ins, there is an order of operations to who gets to pick and when and all of that, right? And I believe the Cheez-It Bowl has first pick.
Yeah, it goes Cheez-It, Gator, Holiday. That's the order of the picks.
It sounds like, from what I have heard and what I've read, is that the Cheez-It Bowl wants Florida State.
Right.
And so the next one would be where Notre Dame would go, because nobody's going to turn down Notre Dame.
Right.
And so that sounds like the Gator Bowl.
And if the Cheez-It did pass on Florida State, they would probably take Notre Dame. But I've heard exactly what you're hearing, that like both of those bowls, because they're in Florida, because it's been a little bit since Florida State,
right?
It's kind of been in that, where they could go, that like both of them really covet Florida State right now.
Right.
So,
yep. So that's the way it sounds to me, is that Notre Dame's going to end up in the Gator Bowl against an SEC opponent.
Right.
Whoever that SEC opponent may be, I don't think it matters a whole lot. Obviously, it'd be fun to write about a Lane Kiffin coached team. I like the headlines there.
The one scenario where you could possibly see it, where the Gator Bowl might have a decision to make, again, like if the Cheez-It takes Florida State, but then if North Carolina were to upset Clemson in the ACC championship game, then that knocks Clemson into that tier. Would the Gator Bowl take Notre Dame or Clemson in that situation? Clemson is, a lot closer in terms of fan base and everything.
Here's the thing, though. So Clemson would have 11 wins. Notre Dame has 8. Notre Dame needs to be within 2. No, I'm sorry. They have 10 wins, right? So
they're 10-2 right now.
Clemson is 10-2.
So they'd be 10-3 if they lose again.
So they would still be within 2. So, I mean, Notre Dame could get selected over Clemson. They have to be within 2, I think. Is it within 2 wins or 1 win?
I believe it's 1.
If it's 1, then they have to take Clemson.
There you go.
Take Clemson.
And that's the situation. Yeah, so that's it right there. So that you're right. They would have no choice then. In that case. And that would potentially, again, unless the Cheez-It said, well, we'll take Notre Dame. Well, yeah. But that's the scenario where Notre Dame could end up in the Holiday Bowl, is if North Carolina beats Clemson.
And I know that the media all wants to go to the Holiday Bowl because it's in San Diego. I get it. But I think our bags are – I don't see – number one, I don't see North Carolina upsetting Clemson. But in that scenario, then Notre Dame would get pushed to the Holiday Bowl. You are absolutely correct about that. And for everybody that wants LSU to win, or LSU to be in the Gator Bowl. I think they would pretty much have to get absolutely smoke showed by Georgia, which is definite possibility. I would have to look at the SEC tie-ins.
They would fall into that range because all those teams, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, South Carolina, all have at least 4 losses. And if LSU were to lose, which they probably should, lose to Georgia, they'd have 4 losses at that point as well. So, I mean, they could be.
Yeah.
I'm still,
we'll see.
I'd rather pass the circus than stop it.
And it would be a circus. And can you imagine? Can you imagine if
I'll take a playoff game in a couple of years over
loses
the Gator Bowl?
Can you imagine if they lost that game? If Notre Dame loses that game?
I know.
I don't know that I want to be in an off season where we have to talk about Brian Kelly beating Notre Dame like that. I just would not enjoy that at all.
No,
so
I hear you.
I'm just gonna say that.
I hear you. Well, Vince,
are
you ready for rapid fire?
Say it's time, baby.
It is time. It is
time. I'm ready.
I'm going to start off with a listener question for rapid fire before we get into the topics we were going to get into. I'll just start with this. What's this about Luke Fickell turning down Notre Dame before hiring Coach Freeman? It's all over the Cincinnati podcast, I'm being told.
Okay. Of course it's all over the Cincinnati podcast because they want themselves to feel good about themselves in that the reason that Fickell didn't come to Notre Dame is that he wanted to stay at Cincinnati and go to the New Year, the playoff, right?
Right.
That's what Cincinnati fans want to believe. The truth, what actually occurred was that Luke Fickell really wanted the Notre Dame job, but he was a distant second place to Marcus Freeman. Okay. That's where the erroneous reports came that Luke Fickell was going to get the Notre Dame job. Remember when that was all going down? I want to say it was Dennis Dodd that had it out there that Fickell was going to Notre Dame. Where do you think he got that information? Luke Fickell or his camp, right? That's how that got out there. That wasn't coming from Notre Dame. Luke Fickell was never a finalist for this job. If you want to say finalist, like a top 5, top 3.
I was going to say, like, what was a finalist when they
never in the league?
Who they talked to in a 4-day span,
right?
And
I know that Jack reached out to numerous people, and he probably did reach out and gauge interest, right? But once they zeroed in on Marcus Freeman, it was game over. Like they did not offer him the job. He did not have an opportunity to turn down the job.
Correct.
So he wanted the Notre Dame job. Now, once he knew he wasn't going to get the Notre Dame job, it was, I'm staying in Cincinnati. You know, there was that because he didn't want to go anywhere else.
We're going to the playoffs.
Yeah. He changed it pretty quickly, which, okay, that's what you do. I have no problem with that. He wanted the Notre Dame job. They didn't want him.
Now, this is valid, Derek. And again, this has been a year ago, and
that's easy.
I think that you could have contained that while, he was in the running for a playoff. He wasn't just going to, I don't think he was ever going to bail on Cincinnati the way Brian Kelly bailed on Notre Dame. Because again, remember, this was before the conference championship games and all that stuff. He was interested. To what extent, how serious it got, any of that. I think there was more interest on his part than there was on Notre Dame's part.
Correct.
And probably just the best way to leave it.
As far as, would you stick with Cincinnati? I mean, if he was going to take the Notre Dame job, I'm sure they would have let him coach the Cincinnati game, number one. Number two, you also have to be an adult and you have to think long-term versus short-term, right? Short-term, Cincinnati's in the playoff. Did anybody really think that Cincinnati had a shot at winning the national championship last year? Because if you did, you're one of the only people that's not wearing a Bearcat uniform, okay?
I was going to say, don't talk to Cincinnati fans like that.
So that's fine. But at the same time, where can you have more long-term success, Cincinnati or Notre Dame?
Yes.
Long-term versus short-term, people. Come on.
I'm a little surprised in this case, though, that he's going to Wisconsin and not staying at Cincinnati, since Cincinnati is getting ready to make the move to the Big 12. here. And I thought that kind of played into it as well in the fact that was ultimately still there, but apparently not.
That move, that happened quick. I mean,
yeah.
Granted, Wisconsin has been without a head coach for a while, so I'm sure there had been conversations, but man, they didn't waste any time naming him the head coach after the regular season was over, did they?
No,
wow.
Not at all. Not at all. All right, Vince, Marcus Freeman talked last week about how there's a different feel to the Notre Dame USC game when it's played at the end of the season in Los Angeles compared to when the Trojans visit Notre Dame in the middle of the season. Do you buy or sell making Notre Dame USC the last game of the regular season every year?
It's a huge buy for me. And I've talked about it a little bit on this show. Not this show, one of the shows. I don't know. I've talked to my laptop about it before.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. You spoke to the camera and said.
So with USC going to the Big Ten, that's going to shuffle some of the, the way the schedules work out, right?
Yep.
The way the Big Ten operates, at least right now. Now, it may change when they start bringing in new people, right? But the way it works out right now, for the most part, all the non-conference stuff is at the beginning of the season. Now, you could, if you're USC, you go in and you say, we want this game at the end of the year every year, then that's fine. Then that's how they're going to schedule things, just like Ohio State, Michigan's the last game of the season. There's ways that you can make this happen, right? I don't think that they're going to be able to do the middle of the season, end of the season, middle of the season, end of the season thing that they've been doing this whole time. I personally would love to have this game at the end of the year every single year. And especially with the fact that USC is on the incline. I think Notre Dame is on the incline. Mm-hmm. And when you have two elite teams facing off with each other the last game of the season, that's awesome.
Exactly.
I want that all day long. People are like, well, then you got too much on the line at the end. It's a 12-team playoff, baby.
I love it.
You're playing for seeding, number one, as well as bragging rights. Would
you rather have Notre Dame playing USC every year at the end of the schedule, or continue this? Oh, we're going to Northern California now. We're going to play Stanford in a completely meaningless game.
Yes.
If you had Notre Dame USC at the end of the season every year, that becomes part. It's right there. It's already a great rivalry, but I think it would become even more magnified in the same realm, especially now that USC is going to be playing in a Midwestern Conference, against Michigan and Ohio State. It puts it right up there in relevance. It jacks the relevance of this rivalry up even more, because you play it in the mid, like when they come to South Bend, when they come to Notre Dame, and you're playing in the middle of October, then it's like, there's some cachet to it, but it's not nearly, there's not nearly the meaning to it like when it's the last game of the regular season, because there might be implications for one team, there might be implications for both teams. And as you said, with both teams on an upward track, there's more likely than not going to be playoff implications for both of these teams for the next several years. So I think it would be great. I think it would be awesome. And because of what you said, because USC is going to the Big Ten, things are going to have to get reconfigured anyway. If Notre Dame wants to keep Stanford, then just make Stanford home and home in mid-October every year, because it doesn't deserve near the stature that it gets right now with this alternating in November thing.
And, there's going to be the UCLA USC game, right? That's going to be something that they're going to play every year, but that's now a conference game anyway, and it will continue to be if UCLA follows through and comes to the Big Ten. One of the posters says USC won't go for that. Okay, I get that to a degree. First of all, USC is not going to be the one to say we're done with this rivalry.
But they're not going to have a choice about if they have to go to Columbus in November or Ann Arbor or East Lansing or wherever.
There's too many cold weather teams that you're going to have to go to.
They're going to have to go on the road at least twice as of right now in the month of November to play Big Ten teams.
Exactly. So
there's no reason not to anymore.
And the Big Ten's going to have a big say about what their schedule looks like. A big say. But the Big Ten is going to have way more say over your schedule than the Pac-12 did, because you're not the big fish anymore. You're a big enough fish that they wanted you in, but you're not the big fish. You're already taking a back seat to Michigan and Ohio State, right? So you're not going to have the say that you think you're going to have coming into the Big Ten. I firmly believe that. So they're going to have to play someplace in the snow. And I'm all about that being South Bend, at least every other year.
I completely agree.
So we'll see.
I think it would be great, again, for the rivalry. I think it would
Yes.
be great for college football. And I can't remember if RJ Abadia, and if you listened to the whole thing the other day, he was telling me, and I can't remember if he told me this before or during the interview, because we talked about a few things before the interview. You know, we hit the record button, but he was saying that the reason USC and Stanford have to play in September every year right now is because of that alternating November schedule that they each have with Notre Dame, because every other year, each of them have to step out of Pac-12 play at the end of the season. And so because of that, the Pac-12 has made them play one of the earliest conference games every year in September because of their, now again, that's going to change because USC is pulling the plug and jumping out of there. So
right. They're probably not going to play Stanford anymore. Lucky them.
Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Okay, fill in the blank. Kind of on the same topic here, a little bit anyway. The Thanksgiving college football schedule filled with rivalry games. Notre Dame, USC, Florida State, Michigan, Ohio State, the Iron Bowl, Alabama, Auburn. But if the college football playoff expands, there's a good chance that all these rivalry games are going to have to move off the Thanksgiving schedule, basically be played at least a week earlier to accommodate the playoffs, and they'd probably be replaced by conference championship games Thanksgiving weekend. So that would be blank if that happens.
It'd be unfortunate, but it wouldn't be the end of the world because for me, that's must-see TV anyway, regardless of what weekend it's on. Now, it's nicer that it's Thanksgiving weekend because you've got more days and you can kind of spread those games out. Like we had a couple on Friday night, and you can spread them out a little bit more, and so that's always nice. I'm still going to watch all of those games if it was the weekend before as opposed to Thanksgiving week. So it loses a little bit of its luster, but not a whole lot because I'm still going to watch it. And the conference game, unfortunately, so for this season, for example, so if we took this season and we put it, a couple of years from now, and you look at these conference championship games, which one of these conference championship games are you really looking forward to watching? Because none of them really light my fire, if I'm being honest.
They're all anticlimactic.
They are. I mean, do I want to see Georgia win big? Yeah, I do. But I don't think the outcome is in any kind of flux, right? I don't think the outcome's in flux in the Pac-12. I don't think the outcome's in flux in the ACC. Those games just don't. The rivalry games are more exciting. That's better football, I think, than some of these championship games.
Yeah, and that's Chi-Town says he's sticking with tradition, and that's kind of part of what's going to stink is you're going to. That's to me one of the bigger downfalls of the expansion of the playoff, and really. It's not just the expansion of the playoff, but like realignment has done it as well. Like a lot of the traditions and rivalries are going away. And again, that's why I think it would be cool going back to the Notre Dame USC thing to have that part of the whatever tradition you can create, that's always going to be at the end of the season, just like Michigan and Ohio State, just like Alabama and Auburn. Where that happens to fall on the calendar, I think is really kind of irrelevant. It's cool right now to have it Thanksgiving weekend. You've got the extra day, Black Friday and all that stuff. And obviously you're off on Thursday, but that's still more in NFL day. But it's it's kind of cool to have it that weekend just because you've got a longer holiday, a longer time off and all that kind of stuff. It's cool to have it. If you bump it up a week, it's still going to be there. It just kind of gets more compacted, I guess. Like you can't throw a few of them on Friday. Like LSU, Arkansas used to be one of those rivalries as well. And that's kind of been pushed aside as well, after the SEC has continued to expand. That used to be played on Friday not that long ago. But, you still get to play them. So I think that's cool. But so it'd be a little bit disappointing, but at the same time, you still get the games. Right. And that's all that matters.
Because right now, if this was an odd numbered year, right? Notre Dame's playing Stanford on rivalry weekend.
Yeah.
Stanford is not Notre Dame's rival. That is.
See, and again, it's Notre Dame, Stanford, Notre Dame, USC versus you've got Michigan, Ohio State going on at the on the same day. What game stands out more to you if you could have it every year on the same? If you could have Notre Dame, USC every year at the end of the night after you started the day with Michigan, Ohio State,
sign me up every year for that.
Every single baby.
Year. Yeah, every year.
Scale of 1 to 10. What chance do you give Caleb Williams to win the Heisman?
About a 9.5, and I'm only putting it at 9.5 in case he breaks his leg and somebody does something amazing this weekend. But the problem is his biggest competition. They're done for the year. They're done. There's nothing else for them to do, right? Alabama, done. Ohio State, done. There's nothing else they can do to add to their Heisman hopes.
It's true.
Caleb Williams, number one, had the last say on Saturday night, and he had quite the statement. Mm-hmm. And he's got another say that he's going to have in the Pac-12 championship this weekend. So I don't see how he can't get it. And it's not because he necessarily went out and earned it, but the other guys just took such a step back, in my opinion, that it's like he's kind of the last man standing. Hey, Caleb, don't screw it up, dude. And he went out and beat Notre Dame. So that was his Heisman moment. I don't see how he doesn't win.
No, I completely agree. There's a guy who won the Heisman back in the 60s. His name is Roger Staubach. And the kind of stuff Caleb Williams was doing was like Staubach-esque, like the whole running around and scrambling and, eyes in the back of your head and all this different stuff, keeping plays alive. It's like Notre Dame's secondary played about as well as they could play. But Caleb Williams just managed to keep plays alive all night. I don't want to completely rob USC's offensive line of credit because it is a better offensive line than it used to be. And they did do a pretty good job of protecting most of the night. But Caleb Williams definitely makes that line look even better than it is with his ability to do all this stuff, to run, 60 yards all over the field and then find a guy downfield and hit the open man after the play is broken down 10 seconds later.
No doubt. I mean, he pulled some Houdini stuff numerous times, right? And we told you guys going in that was going to happen. Like, he was going to do this stuff. And you got to tip your cap, and it is what it is. And he made some very good reads in the run game and was able to score touchdowns doing that. I mean, he only had 35 yards rushing, but they were some impactful 35 yards, Sean. So, he did what he needed to do. He wasn't amazing against Notre Dame, but he was pretty stinking good. And he was able to get himself out of trouble more times than he was in trouble. And that's the sign of a really good quarterback.
I know.
It just is. And if they were playing with their backup quarterback, Notre Dame wins this game going away.
For sure.
That's the difference. He was the difference in this game, though. He was the difference.
Yep. I give him a 9 to win the Heisman. The only chance that he doesn't, I think, is if he would have a bad game in the Pac-12 championship game and Drake May plays out of his mind. Like, he's probably lost it the last 2 weeks, losing to Georgia Tech and NC State, but he's going to play Clemson. So he's going to have his own moment, for maybe a chance to put, his last little finishing touch. But, again, I would give Caleb Williams the 9. I would put the 1 on Drake May ahead of CJ Stroud at this point, just because May has one more shot, to have some kind of big Heisman moment of his own.
That's fair.
And it's a big if Williams would struggle in the
against a big time opponent like Clemson. Yeah. I mean,
right.
So he's got an opportunity. You're right. I just think that's an awfully big hill to climb right now, and it's 9-1 for you. So, I mean, I'm not saying that you're saying that Drake May's going to win it,
right.
But, I think the problem for Drake May in, even moving forward to next year is his pieces around him just aren't good enough, in my opinion, for him to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, more often than not, the Heisman winner comes as the best quarterback, or, the quarterback of one of the best teams. And I don't see North Carolina ever being that.
No, I concur. Fill in the blank. Speaking of Williams, it's blank that he painted FND on his fingernails during Saturday's game against the Irish. Of course, he didn't just write F. He actually spelled out the word.
All
Use
4.
your imagination if you need to. But
all 4 right there.
What do you think of that, Vince?
Well, I think a lot of things about this. Number one, to me, to Vince, it's incredibly immature and kind of stupid to paint your nails. But if that's what motivates you, then so be
Supposedly
it.
he does this with
Right.
all opponents, like he did it with
Okay.
UCLA the week before, kind of thing.
And that's okay. I mean, if that's what motivates you, if painting your nails motivates you, then I guess peace be with you.
Right.
That's fine.
Like, I'm gonna get in the huddle and I'm gonna look at my nails.
Right, exactly. I think the funniest part about this whole thing is how upset it got Notre Dame fans.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, guys, if you don't like it, and I realize the fans aren't on the field, you don't like it, shut him up. Like, make him play bad. I don't, like, who cares? It's not just because it happened to be on his nails. Guys write stuff on their eye black. They write stuff on their shoes. Baseball players write stuff on the bottom of their bill, right? That's what I would have my team do all the time at the beginning of the season. Write down a personal goal and a team goal. Write it on your bill so you see it all the time, right? Is it silly that he puts it on his fingernails? Yeah, it is. But who cares, man? Who cares?
And that's what it comes down to. If a, super zoomed in lens hadn't caught it,
right,
then no one would be talking. It's like so minuscule. Of course, nobody saw it like during the broadcast, right? I don't think they zoomed in on it during the broadcast. This was all still photos and stuff that showed up afterwards. I think it's a little stupid, but again, at the same time, like, when I played back in high school and, would write things on my cleats or whatever, I didn't write any expletives.
Yeah, exactly. So that part's immature. Like, that part's immature to me. He could have put beat Notre Dame or, something along those lines. I mean,
right. And I was thinking, like, what did Notre Dame ever do to Caleb Williams before the other, and like they didn't do anything to him.
They didn't recruit him. Okay. So he didn't get recruited. Okay. Should Notre Dame have recruited him after Saturday night? Yeah. They should have recruited him.
Yeah.
Just another thing for me to not like Brian Kelly about. Okay. You didn't recruit him. Okay. I mean, Notre Dame didn't recruit a lot of guys that are really good. So, I don't know. I find it incredibly immature, but I find it more immature that Notre Dame fans are upset about it. How about that?
Yeah. And see, this guy has got it in his handle, FUSCND88. So there you go.
I love it.
Okay, fill in the blank. There was a lot of anti-Herb Street Fowler stuff, both during and after Saturday night's game. Biggest issue you had with them was blank.
Well, I was in the watch party, obviously, and
which I forgot when I wrote this question, but
which is totally cool. Those guys in general, okay, so I'm going to go from a generality standpoint with this because I didn't hear their commentary, right? But from a generality standpoint, they're going to push whatever national storyline that they think they need to push. And that was clearly Caleb Williams on Saturday night. And they were pushing him like crazy from what I understand, right? But you know what? They backed the right dog in the fight. I mean, I guess I don't really have a huge issue with it, even though it came off as incredibly homerish. But that's what they do. Every time Notre Dame played Clemson, they were all over Trevor Lawrence. That's just what they do. People need to not get their, what's in a bunch.
Yeah, and I mean, again, like we're starting to, all it took was saying their name and 3, 2, 1. Here come all the people sounding off. One, this is just like the Joe Buck hate, right? Because like you're watching a World Series game. You've got the Indians and the Cubs. When the Cubs are winning and the Cubs are making plays, Indians fans think that Joe Buck is cheering for the Cubs. When the shoe is on the other foot, Cubs fans think that he's cheering for the Indians. If Notre Dame would have been winning and they would have been talking up Drew Pine, you'd have no problem with anything that they said. So that's part of it. You're disgruntled, you're ticked off, your team is losing, and so every little thing, it's like, Fowler is cheering more for US. He's more excited for USC than he is for Notre Dame. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're ticked off. Your team's losing. Here's the thing I had the biggest problem with, and it came down to one thing, because again, like the pass to Mario Williams, when Williams scrambles all over the place and and he hits Williams, and then Williams jumps up and he does the first down point. Feller's like, oh, and he converts the fourth down when he's like 8 yards short.
Yeah.
The first down. It wasn't because he was cheering for Williams. I think he just got caught up and he saw Williams do the point, and rather than actually look at where the yard markers are, he fell for that. Which is an issue. It's, you still have to be aware of what's going on the field, but I think that was why he got fooled by Williams doing that. My biggest thing was the whole Brandon Joseph on the punt return, because Herbstreit, they diagrammed and Herbstreit was perfectly right. Like, if Joseph, instead of fair catching that punt, if he takes off to his right, he might go the distance, because as Herbstreit said, all he's got is offensive linemen to beat on that side of the field, but instead he fair catches it. But then where Herbstreit stuck his foot in his mouth is when he says, well, I can forgive that because Joseph's not the regular punt return man. Well,
that's not doing your homework.
Did you do any preparation for this game? Because all you've got to do is look at a stat sheet and go, Brandon Joseph has 18 punt returns this season. Matt Salerno has 4. I mean, Did you just stick in game film from the last couple weeks and you saw this other guy back there on punt returns? So Brandon Joseph's not the regular punt returner. That's my biggest issue, is the lack of preparation put into it. And is the fact that he's doing game day and an NFL game on Thursday affecting that? I think that was a legitimate question that maybe people had about it when he gets this job doing NFL games on Thursday, because you cannot, when you're doing you're doing the national game of the week every week. And there are a lot of things they're going to slide by some people, like USC fans probably, that went right over their head, unless they're really paying attention. They don't know who Notre Dame's regular punt returner is. That's a huge thing, though.
It is.
Saying Brandon Joseph has been the main punt returner.
He's been good at it.
He's been injured for a couple weeks.
He's been good at it too.
Yeah.
So
the lack of preparation is the biggest thing to me. You can, all that other stuff, it's whatever. Again, it's like you get disgruntled as a fan and you're watching the game, and some of those things bug you a little bit more. But the lack of preparation by a national guy, like Herbstreit is basically supposed to be the preeminent college football analyst. He's got to know that. He just does.
Yep, I agree completely. And
I'm sure he'd tell you that too. But
Ben Tarnowski, I just had his up there. He did the Ohio State game where Brandon Joseph was the punt returner.
Good call.
So that's a really good call, Ben. You're 100% right. That's just lack of preparation, and that's weak. It's weak, And I need to go back and watch that again because somebody said that the gunner purposely ran past Joseph because he fair caught it, so that he was down there prepared to make the tackle, but then ran past him. So, I don't know if it was as obvious. I don't know. I'd have to see it. I'm just saying what somebody said.
Again, the first half, when I was watching it live, couldn't hear any audio because, we were in a little bar down there. Second half, they sounded like chipmunks on the TV because of the bad feed that I had. And I've watched, some of it since I've been home, but I just got home last night. I've watched some of it today. I haven't watched the whole thing, so I didn't get to that point. So I'd have to go back and watch that as well. Okay, ACC Big Ten Basketball Challenge is going to come to an end after this year. SEC Big 12 Challenge is also going to end. The ACC actually put out an official release about this today. So starting next year, we're going to get the ACC SEC Basketball Challenge. Do you buy or sell the move, Vince?
I sell it. It's terrible because I don't SEC basketball, SEC basketball. So now I'm an ACC guy because I follow Notre Dame. Notre Dame is in the ACC, so I'm putting my ACC hat on, right? ACC, pretty darn good basketball conference normally, right? The SEC, Big Ten, usually a pretty good basketball conference.
Yeah.
Why would you not want the two preeminent basketball conferences playing against each other? That was the whole point of doing that in the first place. So you're going to drop the Big Ten, which frankly has been better than the ACC, I think, top to bottom for the past couple of years anyway. And now you're going to hook up with the SEC? I'm sorry, that's a downgrade in matchups to me.
I think big picture for the ACC, I agree with what you're saying. From a Notre Dame perspective, though, in the games that were, it's like, how many more times does Notre Dame have to play Michigan State, Illinois, or Iowa? It's like there was never any variation in who their opponents were. So so like from purely a Notre Dame perspective, I don't mind seeing this go away. But you're right. Like in terms of overall matchups, ACC, Big Ten are two of the better college basketball conferences year in and year out. And to see it go away from that aspect, it's like you get North Carolina, Indiana, those kind of things. It's like, there's a lot better matchups. The SEC, as you said, is not necessarily known for, and I guess there's going to be a Big Ten. I can't remember if there's going to be a Big 10, Big 12 thing or not. But
they're just all switching teams essentially. Like, I don't know. None of those matchups are going to get me all that excited. I guess the only one would be if Kentucky, Notre Dame got to play Kentucky. Okay.
Yeah, but still, like even that, we've seen that one. We still see that one over the years.
Absolutely. So you want to see Ole Miss, you want to see Florida. I don't know. None of those just really do anything for me.
No, you're absolutely right. Other than Kentucky, I mean, who's going to move the needle for you? Now, like when Texas and Oklahoma come in, maybe that becomes a little bit more,
but still not as much as the Big Ten. Because at least the Big Ten, you have regional ties, like because we're in Big Ten country, right? So, you're going to fill up a stadium a lot more, an arena a lot more readily because you're going to get some opposing fans. Maybe people don't like that, but I like a full arena when I go to games. You know what I mean? And I'm going to go to the game on Wednesday night against Michigan State. It's probably going to be full, and it's going to be a good crowd until the beatdown begins. But
you're going to do a little game recap after that?
Maybe.
All right. I'm counting on you. Oh, sure. Bonus question, Vince. Yes. What's the better Thanksgiving leftover, turkey or stuffing?
Stuffing. Well, you're talking about leftovers. See, you can do a lot with turkey, though. You can go with a sandwich route. You can just go the open-faced route.
Yep.
There's a lot of things you can do, and if you don't warm up the stuffing properly, then it's kind of gooey, and that's where I would have an issue. So
I've got the answer for you.
What do you got, brother?
I want everyone to take notes on this. Okay. 2 years ago, I bought this. It's a little mini. It's only like this big around. It's a waffle maker, right? So little mini waffle maker. You take your stuffing, you shove it in the waffle maker for about 5, however long it takes. Gets nice and crispy on the outside.
Ooh.
So you're making a stuffing waffle, right? And like you were just talking about, it's too, it can get gooey and stuff like that. So you've got a little waffle then with nice, warm, crispy goodness on the outside. And then if you want, you can make 2 little waffles, or you can just cut that in half. You shove your turkey in there. If you like your cranberry sauce,
that was a trick question.
Gravy. So the answer is the stuffing, because to me, you can do more with the stuffing. But again, that's like the perfect way to make your post-Thanksgiving sandwiches with the stuffing waffle or the waffle stuffing, whatever you want to call it. Trust me on this. It is a pro move.
It is a pro move.
I just had one today because we didn't get the full, we were gone.
Yeah.
We got Bohemian Thanksgiving down there, which
that was like, yeah.
But my in-laws and Jesse were up here, so they left us some of their leftovers. Nice. And so I did the waffle stuffing. Boom. You guys, gals, you're not going to be disappointed if you try this. I guarantee you. If you are a stuffing person, you're not.
I am a stuffing person, and but we went out to eat, so I don't have any leftovers, unfortunately.
Yeah. We used to do that too, and we went, you know what? Like, even though it's a pain in the butt cooking all that food for just 3 or 4 people or whatever, it's like, if you want the leftovers, you got to do it.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
All right. Well, tomorrow is the 1-year anniversary. BK Day.
Oh, is it really?
It is. Wow. Tomorrow is 1 year, BK Day. Jesse and I will get into that on tomorrow's show.
Nice.
So we'll have it for you. All right.
Nice. I like that. I knew it was. I actually thought about that today because it was right after the Stanford game last year. And I remember thinking to myself, what day was that? And now I know. tomorrow.
Is there upon further review tonight, Vince?
The plan was to have it tonight, but I have not spoken with Brian all day. So I assume yes, but I don't know the answer to that. To be perfectly honest. I just like to be honest with the people.
All right.
Not sure.
Hit the like button on your way out if you would. Subscribe, rate, review on the podcast. The IB Nation is growing larger and larger every day. Appreciate you. All right, Vince, I will talk to you later.
Yes, sir.
We'll talk to we're getting out just in time because the porn bots are showing up. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Come on.
IB Nation Sports Talk.